We'll start with the key races for Senate and governor that remain too early to call this morning. In Arizona, Democratic incumbent Senator Mark Kelly maintains a small lead over Republican challenger Blake Masters. And in the governor's race, Democrat Katie Hobbs has a slight edge over Republican election denier Kari Lake. As of last night, there were still about 350,000 ballots yet to be counted in the state's largest county, Maricopa. The first batch of votes from those ballots are expected to be released today.
In Nevada, about 50,000 votes remain to be counted in the state's largest county. Across the state, an estimated 40,000 additional ballots still need to be counted. Mail-in ballots still will be accepted in Nevada until tomorrow, as long as they were postmarked by Election Day. Republican at the moment, Adam Laxalt, holds a slight lead in the Senate race against Democratic incumbent Catherine Cortez Masto, but she has steadily been closing that gap. Meanwhile, in the race for Secretary of State, Republican Jim Marchant, a Trump-endorsed election denier, currently trails Cisco Aguilar by 5,000 votes in a race that still is too early to call. In Georgia, preparations for next month's Senate runoff are underway now, and it is shaping up to be expensive. Incumbent Democrat Senator Raphael Warnock's campaign has laid out its strategy in a memo. The campaign says it will continue to promote Warnock's work with lawmakers while attacking Republican rival Herschel Walker as, quote, completely unqualified for a job that requires knowledge of the issues and an interest in listening and learning. Warnock kicked off his campaign for the runoff yesterday afternoon with an event in Atlanta, calling the race one of competence and integrity.
Herschel Walker has shown us that he's not capable. He's not ready to do any of that. In fact, he's shown us that he's not really interested in doing any of that. Herschel Walker has no vision for our state or for our country. Character matters. Integrity matters. Telling the truth matters. Competence matters. In Georgia, you deserve a senator who will tell you the truth and who will actually do the work.
Meanwhile, Herschel Walker raised more than $3 million on the first day of his runoff campaign. Speaking at an event yesterday with Senator Ted Cruz, Walker said Georgia will not be divided on his watch.
It don't matter what we are, but what I do know we're Americans. That's what matters, that we're all Americans, and that's what we need to get back to. We need to get back to being an American rather than being something else. Because that's what they're trying to do. Divided, that's divided. When they divided you, that's how they conquer. But I want us to wake up to it. That's what you got to do. You got to get out and vote. You got to get out and vote because, you know, he hung around and got into this runoff. And he thinking he's going to win. We need to prove him wrong and let him get out of that office. He don't deserve to be in that office representing Georgia.
Let's bring in political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Greg Bluestein. His latest reporting looks at how Warnock became the last Democrat standing in Georgia's top 2022 races. So, Greg, good morning. It's good to have you with us. We can look ahead to the runoff, but your piece this morning is so important to look at because, as you say, Warnock overcame a lot just to, have the slight margin. He didn't get to the majority. He needed 50%, but just to win the race, to get to the runoff, given the way Brian Kemp performed against Stacey Abrams, going all the way down the ballot, the Secretary of State, Raphael Warnock outpaced Democrats in Georgia.
Yeah, he outpaced them dramatically. I mean, a lot of folks around the country are looking at, hey, how could he have gotten forced into runoff against someone like Herschel Walker? But instead, you're exactly right. He outpaced every other Democrat here who got clobbered. A lot of leading Democrats lost by almost double digits, lost by big margins to Republicans. He maintained that strategy of working bipartisan, working across party lines. He does not want to make this race a referendum on Joe Biden because that would spell doom for his campaign. Joe Biden's approval ratings are lower than 40% in Georgia. Instead, he wants to make this an issue of character between him and Herschel Walker. And that's why he's talking about, their differences in their opinions and their stances and their backgrounds. But also that's why he's focusing on trustworthy issues because polls show that half of Georgians don't trust Herschel Walker. And yet some Republicans are still voting for him. They're holding their nose and voting for him because it's control of the Senate that's on the line. And we'll know in a few days, hopefully, if that is actually the case here in Georgia.
So, Greg, what does the runoff look like now? We've been at this, did it last year, a runoff, but this is different with Herschel Walker as the Republican candidate now. When you don't have Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger and those Republicans on the ballot, it's just a head-to-head matchup. Are Republicans still energized to go out and vote for Herschel Walker?
You know, that's why Senate control is so important, because so many Republicans that we've talked to are voting purely because it's a vote against Joe Biden and it's a vote against Democratic control of the Senate. And if that's not on the line, if Democrats have control of the Senate at that point, then it's a different story. And I think that helps Raphael Warnock. If it is on the line, then really it's kind of a race reset. And it's kind of a toss-up, in my view, at least, with hundreds of millions of dollars going to be spent here in Georgia. The other big difference than just last year's runoff is that this runoff is not 9 weeks, it's only 4 weeks. So you're already seeing the campaigns rev up their machinery, trying to get out the vote all over again, trying to appeal to their core supporters because, you know, it's right around the corner.
Greg, Donald Trump, of course, got Herschel Walker into the position he's in now. Many Republicans have already suggested he should at least delay his announcement until after the runoff. I'm sure many of them don't actually want him to show up in Georgia in the next 4 weeks. Do you think he's going to be able to resist?
That's a great question. And I know there's some internal discussion in the Herschel Walker campaign about whether they want him to come down here because, look, turnout was muted here. You know, I think the Herschel Walker campaign was stunned that not only did they not win outright, but also Raphael Warnock outpolled Herschel Walker. He was slightly ahead of him in the final vote count. So you know, if you want to turn out, if you want to drive turnout, if you want to rev up the MAGA base, Donald Trump can do that. Democrats would love to see that as well because they can inject yet another wedge issue in this campaign. Less than about 200,000 more voters backed Brian Kemp than Herschel Walker. Those are those wedge voters. Those are those swing voters who were very concerned, very wary of Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker wants to try to get those Republicans back in the fold, and it's really hard to do that if Donald Trump comes down and spews a lot of polarizing invective.
Yeah, political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Greg Bluestein. Thank you very much for being on this morning.